video though here, Fur Life here, bringing us a brand new archetype analysis on Fur Hire, aka Skyfang Brigade, which is a much better name and should have been called that, but no, because Konami likes puns and memes, it's Fur Hire, which I will refer to him as in this video for the sake of, you know, clarity and, you know, this being an archetype analysis. Anyways, so Fur Hire is one of the two new decks and one revamped deck in Dark Saviors, and is an incredibly interesting deck. So its general strategy is that the deck is very focused on swarming. It's got a lot of really good advantage decks, effects, and also some control elements, but it's much more of a beatdown deck. Now, an interesting thing about this deck, other than the annoyingly obnoxious naming and the really cool idea of it being pirates that are in the sky, you know, if anybody's ever heard of a game called Skies of Arcadia, that's like it's like the first thing I instantly think of, in all honesty, with this deck. But all level 4 or lower monsters have the exact same almost two effects. The first thing and foremost is that each of them that's level 4 or lower can spell summon a Fur Hire from your hand once a turn, and then they also have an effect where if another Fur Hire is summoned while they're already out in the field, they get you something. While all the level 5 or higher monsters have an effect that triggers on summon, and then also has a protection effect. That's generally speaking how it works. Generally speaking, the idea is that you swarm the field with a bunch of the level 4 ones, and then on the final dude, you summon out one of the big guys to then try and go off from there. This doesn't really... This leads to some mixed results. So, first and foremost, we got the two twins, Dampa, Marksman Fur Hire, and Recon Scout Fur Hire. Honestly, due to the similarity between these two, I didn't see any reason to make two separate slides for them. So as I mentioned, they both have the once per turn you can summon out another Fur Hire, and then Dampa lets you pop a face-up card, while Recon pops a face-down card whenever another Fur Hire is summoned. Additionally, they have the exact same stats except flip-flops, so Recon's 1,000, 500, while Dampa's 500 and 1,000. They're both very good cards. They have great destruction effects, which also, thanks to certain cards in the Archetype support route, they are able to trigger during your opponent's turn, which is just amazing. Also, they allow for some rank 2 plays, something that you don't see much nowadays. But due to them being beasts, you can play the Raccoon Xyz monster, which is such a great Xyz. I do wish their stats were a bit better, and I really kind of honestly wish one of them was level 1. This deck does not have a level 1 monster, and I feel like it could benefit greatly from having a level 1 monster due to 1-for-1 and such, but unfortunately we don't. So, as for the ratios on these two, I feel like 2 to 3 of them is good. It's really depending on how you want to play the deck. If you want to do super hyper spam thing, go with 3 of one and 2 of the other. I don't feel like you need 3 of both. But however, I do feel like that the better ratio is definitely 2 of each. Just simply because due to their incredibly lackluster stat line, they are easy to get rid of. But however, thanks to their effects, they're still versatile enough to where you do want to play more than one of them. Moving on, if my keyboard will work, we got Helmer Helmsman Fur Hire. Jeez. The freaking namings of these. So, Helmer, his unique effect is that if another Fur Hire is summoned, you can pitch a Fur Hire card, draw 1 card. Really just great cycling effect in general. Allows for some combos with some of the other cards in the deck, and also adds some much needed consistency. This deck is a very lax consistency. It has 2 search cards. I guess you could say 3 theoretically, but however, it still lacks heavily on the consistency, and this card just helps out a lot with that. However, it is not something I'd recommend summoning first. This is not your normal summon. This is something you normal summon Dampa, you special summon out Helmer, you use Helmer's effect to summon out Recon or something, and then you use Helmer's effect to pitch and draw. That's the general recommendation. Although, obviously, you'd prefer to normal summon the next dude we'll talk about first. Not and with that being said, though, Helmer I feel like is a good 2 to 3 of. It's another weird one. I can see why some people would want to play 3, but I can also see why some people would want to play 2, so it really comes down to your personal preference. His stat line is super meh, but however, he makes a good defender if you summon him in defense, so yeah, I can see why some people would play 2 while some would play 3. Moving on, we got Beat, Bladesman for hire. The little hedgehog who could, I suppose. This little dude who is commanding a currently, like $20 price tag for some reason, is by far one of the best monsters in the deck. So, of course, he has the special summon effect like all the level 4 or lower monsters. And then also, if another for hire is summoned, you can add a for hire from your deck to your hand, except himself. And it has to be a monster. I'm just specifically pointing that out because it's a really obnoxious part of that. So, Beat is really, really good. He's a warrior, he's level 3, he has pretty decent stats, becomes pretty good with the next, well, not with the next dude, but the last of level 4s we'll talk about. And he's just your main starter. You, generally speaking, want to normal summon him, use his effect, summon out somebody else, preferably Helmer. Use his effect to search, and then go off from there. It allows for a lot of plays. It goes without saying you need 3 of him. He's your main starter card. He's your main searcher card. He's just overall really great. And of course, because he's a warrior, you're going to want to play Rhoda to search him out ASAP. Moving on, we got Seal, Strategist for hire. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but he is in fact a goat. Or at least that's what the wiki says. So, Seal is incredibly interesting. He's a beast warrior, 1600 attack, 1000 defense. Pretty good stats all around. He's a dark for some weird reason. And his unique effect is that whenever another for hire is summoned, you can add 1 for hire in your graveyard to your hand. And of course, also it has to be a monster, just specifically mentioning that because it's annoying. We'll get to that here in a minute. And then also, because he's a beast warrior, you can use Tenki, which adds more consistency to the deck. The only issue with Tenki is that, well, Seal's the only beast warrior in the archetype, so yeah, that's kind of obnoxious. But again, he has decent stats, some good recursion, and yeah, he's just a general 2 to 3 of in terms of the deck in general. Moving on, we got Bravo, Fighter for hire. Bravo is by far the worst of the level 4 or lowers. All he does is he pumps up everybody by 500 attack until the end phase of the turn at another for hire summoned while he's on the field. Generally speaking, ideally, you're going to summon him second to last and then use his effect to summon out one of your level 5 or hires, so that preferably you'll have 5 monsters, all of them boosted up by 500 attack and defense, so that you can hopefully go for an OTK. Really decent effect in general, and he's just not very good compared to everybody else, and he's definitely one that you're going to want to run less of compared to the others. So I'd say 1, maybe 2 if you're really wanting to be an aggro focused build, but 1 is definitely the better of the 2 for most builds. Moving on, we got Sagitta Maverick for hire. Starting off with the lowest of the level 5 or higher monsters, Sagitta is incredibly intriguing. And I say intriguing because, yeah, she's the worst of level 5 or higher as well. If this card is special summon, you can inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each monster for hire you control with a different name except herself. You can only use this effect of Sagitta once per turn. Your opponent cannot target monsters that are for hire you control with card effects except this one. So, not to mention, she has 1200 attack and 2400 defense. Yeah, Sagitta is not good at all, really, in my opinion. The only reason why she is even worth considering playing anymore is due to the recent rule changes in regards to time. So now you, if needed, you can, like, let's say time gets called and you're at a regional and you're in main phase 1, you can normal summon your beat, you can use beat's effect to search, and then you can summon out Sagitta, burn your opponent for 500 or 1000, which is probably going to be how much it will be, and then, well, end phase, hey, you win. Her protection is just kind of okay. Targeting is not really anything major that this deck has to worry about. And yeah, the burn effect is just kind of there. This card is just absolute garbage. I would only play maybe 1 of her in the side deck going into game 2 or 3 at a regional or something. Yeah, that's really all she's useful for, is for cheesing out the win in time. Then we got Dyna Hero for Hire. He's the other beast warrior to deck, but he's too high level. So yeah, kind of sucks. So you can't use Tenki with him. But I digress. So Dyna's honestly pretty cool. He's level 6. If he's special summon, you can banish cards from your opponent's graveyard up to the number of for hire monsters you control with different names. That can count himself too, which is really, really cool, because Sagitta and the next one that we'll talk about do not count themselves, but Dyna does for some weird reason, which is great. So theoretically, you can banish up to 5 cards in your opponent's graveyard on his summon, which is probably how it's going to go. Really, really great effect in general, especially in certain matchups. And then also, very, very, very awesome effect here with his protection thing. Monsters your opponent controls cannot target monsters for hire you control for attacks except him. Now, this is awesome because a lot of the other dudes have really low attack and defense, and Dyna's a pretty beefy 2500, so they're gonna have to attack Dyna, which I know that doesn't sound like it's gonna be anything amazing, but in my experience, even against some of the meta decks, that has proven to be a bit of an annoying effect for your opponent. So being able to protect your little dudes and make your opponent attack Dyna first is a better effect than you'll think, especially with the trap card of this deck. So yeah, I definitely think it's worth running one at the very least. Not to mention he's one of the better beaters of the deck. Next up, we got Wiz Sage for Hire. She's a level 7 for some weird reason. If this card is special summon, you can gain 500 life points for each monster for hire you control with different names except herself. And when your opponent activates a spell or trap card or effect, you can, as a quick effect, discard one for hire card, negate the activation. You can only use this effect of Wiz Sage for hire once per turn. The life point gain is actually surprisingly nice and does the same thing as Sagitta. It's just another option for that, end game thing with the time, which is kind of cool. The negation is really good. The only downside to that is that it does not destroy the card. So if your opponent has like a diagram or something, yeah, sure, you can negate the effect, but they're not going to be losing the diagram, which really, really, really sucks. And also has some other issues in regards to some other cards. But however, overall, Sage is a really, really good card for the archetype and is a great board ender. You either want to have her or the deck's boss monster, Raphael, out on the field. Raphael, champion for hire, is a really, really cool card. I really wish that they kept his name Letharo from the Japan, if only because he sounds like, that sounds an awful lot like Laharl from the Skya. I don't know, just a naming thing. Then again, a lot of things are wrong with this deck's naming. So Raphael is a dragon. He's 2800 attack. He's level 8. So I'll just say this right there. All of those combined make him great because he's trade-in target and he's a dragon, so you can revive him with the Return of the Dragon Lord's Monster Reborn spell. So 2 really great things going for him right there. He's 2800 attack, 2200 defense. If he is special summon, you can excavate the top cards of your deck equal to the number of monsters for hire you control with different names except himself. And if you do, add one of them to your hand, also shuffle the rest back into the deck. When your opponent activates a monster effect, you can discard 1 card for hire and negate the activation. So he negates monster effects, whereas Wiz negates spells and traps. And he's just really good overall in general. The sad thing is that his effect is, well, both effects are hard once per turn, so even if you get multiple Raphaels out, you cannot stop multiple monster effects, which is annoying, but however, he's still honestly the deck's best monster. Being able to just grab any card from the top of your deck to your hand, equal to the number, well, just getting to look at the top 4 or 5 cards, well, obviously 4, unless they make a for hire extra deck monster, which would be pretty cool, but I digress. So Raphael is just really good. He generates you advantage, he negates stuff, really powerful monster overall, great everything around him. I personally would run 3, but I can see why some people would want to run 2, because he can be a bit cloggy if you draw multiples, which is always a risky run with really good boss monsters like Raphael. So, now then, unfortunately the deck does not have many spells and traps, and so we're going to be kind of just plowing through these. So first and foremost, I want to talk about the deck's best spell or trap card, and that's Mayhem for Hire. It's a quick play spell card. You target one monster for hire in your graveyard, spell to summon it in defense position. You can only activate one of this card per turn. Now, obviously it is a monster reborn, but it's also a quick play spell, which means you can do it during your opponent's turn, which means you can trigger all of their effects during your opponent's turn, which means you can then pop Destroy, gain attack, search, do all your stuff during your opponent's turn, and not just gain a lot of advantage, but also really screw over your opponent. It's such a great card. The biggest issue with it, and with all the for hire spells and trap cards, is it's not searchable. It's just flat out not searchable. There's no way to search out any of the spells or traps in the archetype. Well, with the exception of the field spell and terraforming, but that's not saying much. This card is amazing. You should be playing 3 of it. I've run across some people who don't think it's worth playing at all, and I don't understand it. Maybe somebody can make a good argument for why you don't want to play as many copies as I think it is. But this card is just absolutely amazing. Not to mention you can even use it during your turn as a combo extender. It's just an absolutely fantastic, or should I say furtastic card. Moving on, we got the Fandora, the Flying Furtress. God, Konami, I hate these names. Okay, so Fandora, I remember there was a lot of hype when Konami first revealed these, and then they realized what they did, and they had to go back and fix it before we even got the card printed, which is just fun. So during your draw phase, before you draw, you can give up your normal draw this turn, and if you do, add 1 for hire monster from your deck to your hand. If you control 5 or more for hire monsters with different names, you can send this card from the field to the graveyard, destroy all cards your opponent controls. Also, for the rest of this turn, your opponent takes no damage. So this card, I've seen a lot of people hate on it, and I can see why, but at the same time I see its merits, and I've tested around with it, and I do think it's a good enough card to warrant playing at least a couple copies of. I don't think it's the worst card in the world. Then again, honestly, this card is basically a better version of Malefic World. Okay, so for those who don't know what Malefic World does, it does basically the same thing, but does not have the nuking effect, and you choose 3 random Malefic cards, and your opponent picks one and adds it to your hand. This one just lets you add it to your hand. You just get to add the card. It doesn't matter. Just add any for hire from your deck to your hand. This card is really good. It's just really, really slow. Now, in general, honestly, considering the deck's playstyle, that's okay. This is a slow-paced deck, which is weird because it's so spamtastic. But however, generally speaking, the deck plays a bit slower than other spam builds. Well, other spam archetypes. So, having a slower card like this is not too bad. And hey, you can pop off your opponent's stuff at the cost of not being able to do any damage to them. But if you time it right, you can really screw over your opponent. And it just is an overall pretty good card. That being said, I do see why some people absolutely hate this card, and I think depending on your build, depending on how you want to do things, and your own personal preference of card design and in your deck's playstyle, I really can't dictate on how many you should play, in all honesty. Personally, I'm playing 3 right now. I might bump it down to 2, but I'm just testing around with things. I feel like this card, it really comes down to player discretion. This is... you either love it or you hate it. So, and I've seen more people hate it than love it, but I don't know. It really comes down to player discretion, so yeah. Just gonna leave it there. Moving on, we got... oh, dear Lord, this name. Training for hire for all your training needs. Konami. I'm done. Anyways, so this is the only trap card in the archetype, and at first I thought it was really bad, but honestly, after playtesting, it's a really darn good card. So, if a face-up monster or monsters for hire you control is destroyed by battle, or an opponent's card effect, you can target one of those monsters, special summon a monster for hire from your deck, whose level is lower than that target's original level. You can only use this effect of training for hire for all your training needs once per turn. So, got a few issues with this card, but overall it's a pretty darn good card. So first and foremost, you can only bring out one monster, which sucks because if your opponent Raigekis your board, you're kind of screwed. You only get one monster back, not 5. And then also it targets, so if your opponent has like a designator or something, they can just chain and get rid of that, so then you kind of get screwed. And also the monster has to be a lower level, so unless you got one of your higher level monsters destroyed, you're not going to get much out of it. And also this is another reason why the deck needs a level 1, but I digress. So why do I like this card? It's honestly really good in certain situations, especially with if you got a big board of all the monsters and your opponent kills one of the bigger ones first, because they're more than likely going to, because they're more of a threat than your little dudes. So then if like you, let's say, your opponent attacks your Raphael, and you flip this up in response. You got, all your little dudes, you got your Beat, you got your Dampa and Marksman, and you got your Bravo, and your opponent runs over your Raphael, he gets popped, and so then, you chain this, you summon out your Dyna from your deck. Dyna's effect triggers on summon, getting rid of 5 cards from your opponent's graveyard. Dampa and Marksman's effects triggers, Bravo's effects triggers, and Beat's effect triggers, getting you 2 pops, a search, and an attack boost for everybody. That is really good, and considering how that's the deck's playstyle, it's really good in those situations. The issue is this deck has no way of searching this card. And also, of course, it's a trap, so it's a bit slow, but it allows you to really screw over your opponent in certain, with like situations like that. So yeah, this card, it's a really make or break card. I can understand why some people would only play 2, especially in the more trap heavy builds, but at the same time I can understand why some people would play 3. And even then, I can also understand why some people would forgo this card in general because, traps are bad and now in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! According to the general Yu-Gi-Oh! Player base, but I'm not going to speak on that. So, really, if you want to play this card, it's comes down to your personal preference and how you your results. Okay, personally, I'm really liking it at 3. I don't see the card much unless I play 3, so it's something that I really kind of do recommend playing 3 of if you play it at all. Alrighty, so outside support, there's honestly, weirdly enough, not much going for this. You got reinforcements of the army, obviously, you got Tenki, you got pretty much any generic Link or Xyz monster because of how just the deck has no extra deck monster stuff whatsoever, and has no real restriction on what you can go into, so you can go into any of your generic Links, Xyz, whatever. Of course, as I mentioned, you got Trade-In, and the Return of the Dragon Lords as well for Raphael in particular. And then also as a consistency booster, you can play Pot of Desires as well, especially if you're playing a more trap heavy build, so then hopefully you don't banish too many of your for hire stuff or too many of your traps. So the deck has a lot to work with, and I think I said that earlier, or I might have said it doesn't, but it does. It has a lot to work with thanks to having such a wide variety of just open versatility with the decks and just all the monsters and everything. Moving on though, this deck is not very good. It's not very bad either. I feel like this deck is a very, very good beginner deck. If you have a friend or a family member who wants to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Or heck, a niece or a nephew or something, or a son, maybe build them this deck. It's cheap, other than Beat being $20 for some reason, but hopefully that goes down in price because this deck is not going to be topping any regionals or anything, but it's a great beginner deck. It doesn't have any super complicated card text or effects. It's super straightforward, has good versatile effects that any deck would kill to have, just a general popping, special summon swarming and everything. And also due to its versatility, you can easily put some Xyz, Links, maybe even find a way to cram in a Synchro in there with a tuner or something. I've seen some people test out Synchro builds of the deck. So you can, it makes a great beginner deck for just teaching people how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! But as a deck itself, it's really straightforward and pretty darn narrow. Your opponent, if they duel against it a few times or even know a little bit about the deck, they're going to be able to guess, generally speaking, everything you're going to do. It really is lacking in a spell and trap card department. As I mentioned, it's really only got one spell that really every build, no matter what, should play. And then the field spell and the trap card are super iffy. Some people like them, some people hate them. So the deck really needs more spell and trap card support. It's got plenty of monsters. It's got plenty of monsters that are covered. Really all it needs in terms of monsters is level 1. And it needs a way to search out its spells and traps. that's like the biggest thing holding back the trap card, is that there's no way to get it to your hand so that you can actually use it, which is really obnoxious. Honestly, if it got to level 1, it searches out the spells and traps, that'd be perfect. Like, in all honesty. That'd, like, fix the deck, in my opinion. But other than that, it really just does need more spells and traps. I do think that this deck could be kind of like a New Age Yosenju, but even then I feel like Yosenju is a bit better, just because they bounce back to your hand, so you don't have to worry about your opponent like nuking them or anything with Regeki. Which, by the way, this deck loses hard to board wipes. If you don't have Wiz out and your opponent freaking drops a Regeki on you, you get screwed over hard, unless you have the trap card and Mayhem. Even then, you still get hurt hard by that. So really, this deck could use more protection as well, which is something I almost forgot to mention. So overall, as I said, I feel like this deck makes a good beginner deck. I don't think it's going to be anything meta relevant ever, unless they get some really broken future support. But I do still really like it. It's a fun deck. It's got a cool theme to it, you know, pirates. Even if Konami ruined it with their furry agenda, as as the Yu-Gi-Oh fan base likes to joke about right now, I still think it's a good deck to just really invest into, especially if you want to get some people involved in Yu-Gi-Oh. But that's just my opinions. What are your guys' thoughts on this deck? Thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great day. If it's your birthday, happy birthday. See you all later. Peace out and goodbye.